What's up, horror fans? Pete here from the Lastercast. See, I got the horror fans part right this time. And Danny and I, we have this history now of reviewing horror movies, but we also review horror shows. Sometimes it goes really well, and sometimes the show starts to peter off like Yellow Jackets did, and then there's shows like Monarch, which you just finished. This time around, though, I think Danny and I are really into the show we're going to be talking about today. We're talking about season 4 of True Detective, and it's called Night Country. Danny, this is your first True Detective show, right?
I had not watched 1 second of one episode of True Detective, not because I, have anything against it. It's just there came a point in my life where I decided I was going to be more of a movie person than a episodic TV viewer, even if it's like, the big channels like Max, HBO Max, like this is.
Yeah.
I've heard nothing but great things, especially of season 1
Yeah.
of True Detective. And I was always under the impression, I know that there's different characters, like it's like McConaughey and Harrelson in season 1. And I know they're not in seasons 2 and 3, but I always kind of thought, oh, it's the same universe. And if I can't start season 4. I have to watch all 3 seasons. You said, no, don't worry about it. You can just jump in. And I'm really glad you did. I said, all right, let me watch the first episode. And the first thing that I had seen on social media was everyone pointing out the VHS of The Thing.
Myself included.
In this first episode.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, that's cute. Like the director put that in there. That's nice. Then I saw who the director was, and I got just insanely excited to continue watching this.
Yes.
Because Issa Lopez directed what was easily, and I mean easily, my favorite horror movie of, I don't know, I think 2016 or 17, Tigers Are Not Afraid. I saw that in a small theater in Manhattan on a whim. Getting to see that in a movie theater blew me away. It went to Shudder. I believe it is still on Shudder. If you have not seen it, if you have no idea what I'm talking about, go watch this movie.
Yeah.
It is absolutely unbelievable. It's scary. It's got some of the best child acting you'll ever see. And when I saw that it was her who wrote and directed so far the first 2 episodes, and it says she created this. So let me ask you, you've watched True Detective before. Is it usually one person who crafts the story for the whole season and writes and directs every episode?
Yes.
Like a Mike Flanagan series, like a Haunting of Hill House, and where it's like he came up with the idea, he wrote the whole story, and it's his baby? Because the credits makes right, created by Issa Lopez, and then the episodes are written and directed by her.
Yeah.
So if she's in charge of this season, that makes me even more excited because I love her work from before, and I've loved these first 2 episodes, and I can't wait now, especially to see where it's going to go.
Yeah. Well, the True Detective name comes from Nick Pizzolatto, who created True Detective. He wrote the entire first season. I've only seen the first season. I haven't seen season 2 or 3. I think he's the writer for all of season 2 as well. That one didn't get as great a reception as the first season or this season so far. I think the third season is actually supposed to be really good, but I know very little about that one. I only know that Mahershala Ali is the main character of that, and I don't know if Nick Pizzolatto is the creator of that. One of the things that you said just now was that it's like, oh, it's in the same universe, and this show is absolutely in the same universe as the first season. I'm not going to spoil too much of that for you because I want you to enjoy it. But I'm glad that you knew a lot about Issa Lopez because I'd never seen that movie, Tigers Are Not Afraid. I hadn't seen that. I wasn't familiar with her work, but I've seen her on Twitter a lot, and she seems like a cool person. Danny and I are both in the Fangoria fan community Facebook page, and boy, were people talking about that show a lot on there. We're talking about this show, True Detective, on there. True Detective, the first season, has Matthew McConaughey and Woody Harrelson as the main characters, and I remember that it had really cool opening credits, just like this season does. What do you think of the opening credits with that Billie Eilish song?
I was gonna say I love that Billie Eilish song, and it instantly hooks me into the show. It's the song itself is really kind of haunting,
Yep.
and it just, sometimes it could be a great song that just doesn't fit in a particular movie or show. Sometimes it could be a song or an artist that you're just not into, and it works perfectly.
Right.
And I think this is, I'm not a big time Billie Eilish fan. I don't feel like I'm that particular demographic, but Charlotte fucking loves her.
Yeah.
And every song I've heard by her, I'm like, oh yeah, this is good. Like, the Barbie song is nominated for an Oscar now. And this song I've heard many times, and it just fits with these opening credits. It just kind of like that cold drive down this icy highway of Alaska.
Yes.
And it just fits with that vibe.
Yes, and it's funny because it shows you all these things that are in the show. Like there's little clips of like weird things, like there's a polar bear that has only one eye, and there's this shrine. Usually when it says like written and directed by, it shows this crazy shrine at the end, and it's very reminiscent of Yellow Jackets. Now, good.
I was also going to say, there's also a part of there is a part of the opening credits with the way it jumps around like that to like items that are in the movie that are also part of crime scenes. That reminded me a lot of David Fincher's Seven.
Very good. That's a very good comparison too. Yeah, there's a lot of things, and so this show pays homage to like a lot of things that we love. And you already mentioned The Thing, and we're going to go into The Thing a lot more. But did you know about the Edgar Allan Poe connection to the show?
No. Did you get the Reddit thing I sent you?
No. Well, yes. Okay, so then you do know it. Yeah. You want to explain what that is?
Well, so what is it? The Salal?
Salal. Yeah.
So not only is it an Edgar Allan Poe connection, but it's a connection to Mike Flanagan and the Fall of the House of Usher.
Yes.
Because just on a whim, totally on a whim, I decided to Google Salal to find out if it meant something in like a native indigenous language or where the word comes from. Because, when you get into these shows, you get used to kind of like hidden meanings here and there. And it turns out it's from an Edgar Allan Poe novel, The Strange Voyage of Arnold Gordon Pym.
It's got like the last leg of the narrative of Arthur Gordon Pym of Nantucket.
Yeah, Arthur Gordon Pym is the character that Mark Hamill played in The Fall of the House of Usher.
Oh, shit. I totally forgot about that. Wow.
Yeah. And when she's talking to him about his journey, and that's where the Salal comes from. It's like the name of like a small island that was supposed to be in like the Arctic, but the temperature on the island of Salal was tropical, and the people there were like cannibals, and everyone died except for Arthur Pym and like one other person. And so we covered, of course, Mike Flanagan, we covered The Fall of the House of Usher, and we talked about that and how it felt Lovecraftian in an Edgar Allan Poe show.
Right.
And now we get the same story,
right?
A different aspect of that same story. It blew me away because this show also hints at Lovecraftian things, and it hints at elements. I don't want to say of the supernatural, but not really.
Yeah.
But that there's more going on there than meets the eye, and for it to be connected to the same Poe story as we just finished seeing in Usher
Yep.
was bizarre. I was like so excited that I sent you a Reddit link, and I was like, I hope he gets that, because yeah.
Yeah, well, the Lovecraft connection, it's really exciting for me because, like you said, that Edgar Allan Poe story, which I think is his only like actual novel, long form novel.
I think so.
From the description, I haven't read it. It sounds like at least that one part is very Lovecraftian. Now, in the first season of True Detective, we see that spiral, the spiral that's on the head of one of the victims.
Okay.
It's in the trailer in the second episode. That spiral is in that first season a lot. And the weird stuff that we find in that trailer at the end of the second episode is like stuff that you see in season one. Now, season one, I'm not going to spoil for you, Danny, but there's Lovecraft references that are like overt. Like, I'm not saying that like there's a guy that fucking shows up with like tentacles coming out of his face, but it's like the first season is ambiguous enough to be like, is this something supernatural? Is it not? This season 4, it seems like it's leading much more into the supernatural.
Hold on. Yes. Oh, it's the Call of Cthulhu.
Right. There you go. Right. And so, speaking of that, see, we're just going all through all these bullet points perfectly. Actually, Call of Cthulhu is not the fucking Lovecraft thing I'm trying to reference, but I like your little dad joke. I'm thinking of In the Mountains of Madness.
Yeah.
And In the Mountains of Madness, I think must have been a slight inspiration for Carpenter when he made The Thing. And all of this is reminiscent of this show with these guys in this remote station, this research station in the middle of Alaska, or like in a very remote part of Alaska.
Yeah, it's Alaska instead of Antarctica. There, it's men only in a research base where they don't leave and they're isolated from the rest of the world, doing science research.
Yeah.
They there's something happens that leads them. Eventually, characters find things that are frozen in the ice that look like they are congealed together and to form some massive, like, humanoid monster of sorts.
Yep.
It wears its Thing influence on its sleeve, to the point where it does show you a VHS copy of The Thing very plainly on site in the first episode.
Right. It absolutely feels like The Thing. Everything with the research station feels like The Thing. Even the guys that work at the research station kind of seem like the guys in The Thing.
One of the guys' names is Clark.
Right. On the Fangoria side, they were like, all right, look, they got the same names, right? But then another movie that I keep thinking about when I watch this show is one of my favorite horror movies, which is 30 Days of Night. Now, Steve Niles, he is the writer of the 30 Days of Night comic. He's the creator of 30 Days of Night, and he was given praise for the first 2 episodes. And, he tagged Isa Lopez. And I was like, yeah, of course he's going to like this, because, boy, does this feel like 30 Days of Night too. We're in an Alaskan town. It's going to be night for an entire month, and there's some sort of murderous force out there.
Yeah.
So, and then besides that, like Jodie Foster, just the way she looks and kind of the way she acts in 30 Days of Night. You have Josh Hartnett. I can't remember the female actress that's in it, but I'll look it up.
Oh my God. It's Melissa George.
Thank you.
Holy
She's excellent.
Shit, I pulled that one out.
She's excellent in it, though. But like, there's that sort of that feeling that you have with this show and with that, where everyone knows each other. It's a small knit community. Everyone kind of has this begrudging, respect for each other, even though everyone kind of knows each other's dirty laundry too. So there's this feeling of like, oh, I know this fuck up, but I'm going to respect them because they live in Alaska like me. And there's this kind of brutality to it. So I think that Jodie Foster, who plays Chief Liz Danvers, I think she just nails that perfectly in this. What do you think?
It's crazy to think that in 2024 we need to be reminded of how great an actress a two-time Oscar winner is.
Yeah.
But this is really the first Jodie Foster performance that I've seen in a long time where it reminds you of just, oh yeah, she is fucking great. Like, she's an all-time great actress from the time she was 13 years old in Taxi Driver to her 2 Academy Award winning performances. Of course, she'll always be Clarice Starling to me, no matter what she does. But you know, she's obviously moved more into directing in the last probably decade. So to see her return and to be this much of a force, I loved her in these first 2 episodes, and I really I like all the characters so far. And
yeah, there's been this praise for her co-star, Callie Reese, and she plays Evangeline Navarro. She was Jodie Foster's partner at one point in the show. I think she's fucking great. What do you think of her?
I love every character on the show. I like how there's obviously the way that Issa Lopez wrote it. There's like built-in tensions that, and I know you'll love this, they don't really need to explain. They really just, they make it very obvious. And again, this goes back to the setting. It's a small town in fucking Alaska where everybody knows each other. And so, you know, Liz Danvers, Jodie Foster's character, has been partners. It makes it feel like she's either been partners with, had sex with,
right,
or is a parent of every character on yeah. Because she makes all of these, she'll like drop this one-liner and she'll be like, well, back when you were married.
Right.
Or like, well, you know, that was before he got a divorce. And you're like, oh, okay. And like, this character doesn't like her. The other male older cop, played by John Hawkes, who I have always had an appreciation for.
Yes.
And his son, and how he's like warning her. He's warning his son, just be careful, because Danvers will always push you to a limit and then you'll hate her. And it's like, that has obviously happened with so many people in this friggin' town.
Yes.
Where she even has this one moment in, I think it's the beginning of episode 2, where she has to go and ask the owner of an ice rink for a favor. Yes. And she sits down and like the owner of the ice rink is like, oh, it must be really fucking important or you wouldn't talk to me. Right. And it's like, yeah, we don't need a flashback there. We get it. They hate each other. And she is a very unpopular person in this town, but she's also a really good police officer. And I love her recurring thing of like, you need to ask the right questions. And I love the framing of that, where you get like every character, like they hate her, but they begrudgingly go along with this method of police work where it's like, okay, like what happened here? No, why did this happen in this way? What would make you run out into the ice without your shoes on? You know,
without your clothes on. Yeah. You know, you bring up a really great point there about you don't need flashbacks. And I'm thinking there are flashbacks in the show. However, there are always flashbacks of really kind moments with her. There's one with like, because she's lost a son and a husband. We're assuming that the son and the husband have died. And so we see her and the husband dancing together, and she's younger and she's happier. We see her and her son like on the floor kind of playing a game together. So like the flashbacks make her seem like a happier, nicer person, but then all the references to the past are just dialogues. That's a really interesting point that you bring up there.
I also like that you could tell because it's a small town, it's also very generational. So
Yes.
she spends a lot of time with John Hawkes' character. John Hawkes' son is her new partner, but John Hawkes' son is very close with her, what I guess is her stepdaughter on the show.
Yeah.
And they have like a moment in episode 2 where her stepdaughter is like, yeah, you know, Liz told me that like her and dad used to dance a lot, and I bet you she used to smoke pot. And the son is like, yeah, well, my dad used to play the guitar, and apparently it wasn't good enough for my mom because like his mom pieced out of there.
Right,
And it's
right.
like, you know, they make it really makes it seem, and we just finished saying this about a movie that we reviewed not that long ago, but it feels like the environment is a character on this show. You know, like I see like supporting cast down there. It should say like Alaska, you know, or Ellis, Alaska, right? Or Ennis, Alaska.
Ennis, yeah.
Ennis, Alaska is a is absolutely a character in this series so far.
Yeah, yeah. I should have a little Alaska thing. We could just talk about Alaska, but I agree that it's definitely a supporting cast member of the show.
Is the guy who created Preacher named Garth Ennis?
Yes, absolutely. Yes.
Is that why it's named Ennis, Alaska?
I would. Yeah, go ahead.
Did Steve Niles have anything to do with Preacher? Did he like?
No.
He was 30 Days of Night.
Correct. Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
But that's a good question. I often think of Garth Ennis when I hear them say the name of the town. I want to talk more about the supporting cast, but I do want to address that Alaska part that you just talked about too. For me, what's interesting about the show is you have this like sort of artificial station that seems very futuristic, where they've had a couple of scenes and they've tried to make it their home, so it's sort of personalized. But then the show is mainly these big long shots of like frozen tundra, basically, where it's just white, right? Just white and roads. Then you'll have the inside of people's houses, and the insides of the houses are all like super cozy for the most part. Some of them are a little trashed out, but like the insides of the houses are so like personalized and match the character. Like Jodie Foster's stepdaughter, or like adoptive daughter, her room has all these like scribblings and stuff on the wall, and it kind of matches her character. The dad, John Hawkes, he's Peter's dad, and he's, you know, Jodie Foster, he like works in her department. He has this like nicely clean kept up house, and he's got this fucking like mail order bride that's coming to him, and he's texting with her. It like whenever I look in their houses, I'm kind of like, oh, I wouldn't mind living there if I lived in a place where it's fucking dark for 30 days straight.
Yeah.
And then it just going along with the idea of like Alaska being a character, there's many moments in the show where I'm like, oh yeah, it's dark, but this could be like 2 p.m. right now, or this could be like 10 o'clock in the morning right now. And it always feels like it's late, but it's just, you know, so that's such an interesting concept, you know? But going back to the supporting cast, I was super happy to see John Hawkes in there. He's like Teardrop in Winter's Bone. I thought he was great in that. He was in this great fucking cult movie. I'm sure you saw it, like Marcy. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah. Mary, Martha. Yeah.
He's great in that. I mean, he's in fucking From Dusk Till Dawn for like 5 minutes, and he's great in that. Yeah. I love him. But someone that I was even more excited to see was Fiona Shaw. I love Fiona Shaw, especially from I've mentioned this on our show before, but Killing Eve. She's so fucking good on that, and she's really good in this too.
Was she was in a season of True Blood, I think, also.
She was kind of lame on that, I'll admit.
Yeah, well, yeah, I had to stop watching that show in the middle. But yeah. I've seen, she's a great character actress who's been around for a long time, and it always good to see like her and John Hawkes. It's like when you see them in a movie, you're always like, oh, okay, like they got like a good character actor in this film or in this show, and I like her character a lot. Her character they make a point where it's like she's being led to things in the wilderness, in the snow, in the ice, by effectively a ghost. Like she sees like somebody who's dead. I think it's her brother or husband.
No. It's a lover. Because at first I thought
That's
it
right.
was
She was like, he
we
would
fucked.
show up, we would fuck. Yeah,
Yeah. See, because I thought it was her son, and then she's like, "We fucked," and I was like, "Oh, okay, it's not her son, right?" But Danny, I am going to spoil one thing for you. That's Matthew McConaughey's dad from True Detective.
Dwight. Is that his name? The guy who
his name is Rust Cole. His name's like Rustin Cole. Is the Matthew McConaughey? I can't remember his name on this season, but that's his dad.
The ghost who leads. Oh shit! Okay.
Because Matthew McConaughey at one point says, "My dad, I don't know, he's been in Alaska for a while or something like that." He references.
Oh
You don't
wow,
see,
that's cool.
you don't see his dad, but his dad is that character. And then another thing, like someone on like Twitter posted, they were like, "Come on, guys, it's True Detective, not the MCU," because they were talking about all this like connective tissue. Another thing that connects it is they mentioned the company that like funds Salal, and it's like there's a shell company, but then they're saying another company funds the shell company, and it's called Tuttle something, like Tuttle Inc. And Tuttle is a name that's important in the first season of True Detective. Yeah.
All right, cool.
You'll see, Ben. I don't know. Like the way that you're talking, I feel like you might actually go and watch the whole Matthew McConaughey Woody Harrelson one
as soon as we're done recording. Yeah, no, probably this weekend, to be honest.
Right.
But the other thing I liked is getting back to Fiona Shaw and her character and seeing a ghost that like led her out to find the big thing of this season. Is other characters in the show talk about how because it's Alaska, because there's 30 days of night, it's not unfamiliar to just like the dead sometimes they just show back up, and it's like it's normal to see a ghost out there, and it's normal to be surrounded by the recently departed, and it's like, oh, this is and that again makes me think about like what would it be like to live in darkness for a month. And like I'm looking outside now and it's dark out because it's 6:30 at night on a Thursday, but if I lived in Alaska it could be 1:30 in the afternoon and I would have no idea.
Exactly.
So
I love it. And to go along with that point, Fiona Shaw is talking to Evangeline in the beginning of the second episode, and Evangeline's talking about her sister because there's so many supporting characters, and she's talking about the things that her sister has seen. And Fiona Shaw has this great line where she says, "Don't confuse the world of spirits with madness or mental illness," or something like that. So it's making that distinction because so many movies, so many shows that we watch, there's characters that are just kind of crazy and they envision things. But in this, she's saying like, no, there's a difference between a person being mentally ill and a person having some kind of spiritual experience.
Yeah.
I love that. I love that. So one other character.
My other favorite supporting character is the bartender.
Yes.
Who looks like he could be Aquaman's stunt double.
Yeah, I was gonna say he could be a Dothraki from Game of Thrones.
Yeah, definitely. Olavic is his name. He's like Navarro's Evangeline's like F buddy.
Yeah.
And their relationship is super cute. Like I like that he's like, and he has like that thick accent where he's like, I don't know, like almost like he's from Minnesota.
Yeah.
Like I thought maybe we could just watch a movie or something.
Yeah.
And she takes his toothbrush and like
toothbrush.
Yeah.
Yeah. I gotta ask a weird.
Back.
I gotta ask a weird question because it ties into that. There's two pretty graphic sex scenes in this show. They both feature the main characters that are right above us right now. The first one is Evangeline. The second one is Jodie Foster. In both scenes, the men look pretty goofy, and they're both like about to finish. and then they're like, oh, especially Christopher Eccleston in the second one. And in both scenes, the women are like, fuck you, you're going to do this, right? And I'm like, is that to basically show that they're kind of similar in some way? I was like, this is kind of weird that there's two sex scenes. They're both very graphic. And the dudes are like, oh, I'm going to finish.
I think it also solidifies that they're like boss characters, like that are both like, they are both going to be the alpha of any relationship they're in.
Okay.
But yeah, I messaged you at one point. I was like, wow, didn't have prolonged Jodie Foster sex scene on my 2024 bingo card. But there you go.
Yes. And she's getting banged by Doctor Who of all people, you know?
Yeah. Christopher Eccleston for me will always be the villain in Gone in 60 Seconds, just because I love his accent, and I love the line where Nicolas Cage like subs in for his brother, and he's like, one rains is just as good as another. It never rains, but it pours. And he makes like some terrible pun about their last name. And I've always liked him. I don't watch Doctor Who, but he's been Malekith in Thor 2. He's been around. He feels like the type of guy who could have and maybe should have played the devil at some point.
I agree.
Very similar to who played the devil in Constantine? Peter Stormare.
That's right.
To me, they have a very similar. They're like very European, but they're also like super cool and could like be leads. They could be villains. They could be supporting characters. And I was happy to see him show up. He's like from the state police. He wants to like the case that they're in, which we haven't even talked about in 32 minutes now. He wants to like give that case over to Anchorage. And Jodie Foster is like, no, don't take this case from me. I want this case.
Yes. Well, yeah. So why don't we talk about that case, right? So essentially, a delivery guy goes to the Salal station. Everyone's missing. The local cops, including Jodie Foster and Peter, and then John Hawkes, you know, whatever his character's name is, they're searching through and they find a severed tongue. The severed tongue has lines on it, and Jodie Foster makes the connection that those lines are from using like fishing net tools and like licking them with your tongue or something like that. And that she makes the connection between local indigenous people, indigenous women, and that severed tongue. That connects this whole mystery to the murder of this woman, Annie Kay, who was murdered in a very graphic way. And it's because she was basically the main protester against the mining company that essentially, like, you know, pays for the whole town, basically. Like, you know, they're the main source of income for the town. But then, Danny, why don't you go ahead, since I summarized all that, why don't you say what the fuck happened to the Salal people?
Well, Fiona Shaw is led out into the I almost called it the desert, the ice, by the ghost of her lover, and she finds what turns out to be 5 or 6 of these men naked and frozen together, like just in a like tableau of sorts that reminded me of season 6 of Dexter. I don't know if you got that far into Dexter or something from Hannibal. Did you watch Hannibal? I
did not. It to me, it reminds me of The Color of Space, when the mom and the son get fused together.
Again, you on the bottom at the beginning with Lovecraft connection. It reminded me, of course, of the Thing, where they are dissecting the Thing, where the 2 faces were like tied together, or the dogs like being like melded together. Of course, Color Out of Space, which is a Lovecraft adaptation. The Nicolas Cage film did a really graphic job of that. It even reminded me of the Marauder from the end of Evil Dead Rise.
Yes.
And Evil Dead in itself, Necronomicon, is Lovecraftian.
Right.
So this idea of like humans being like contorted together into this large amagulus, I don't know, like
Amalogous?
blob. Yeah,
Yeah.
that too. Into like this glob where you can't tell like where one person ends and the other begins, which led to one scene which legitimately made me scream in my bedroom
Yes.
when I was watching it.
Yes.
They're like trying to very carefully like brush these guys, like just so that they could like shovel down and like remove them from the ice.
Yeah.
And while they're doing this, in another scene that reminded me exactly of a scene from Seven, one of the frozen men just goes, and I legitimately went, oh, fuck! Because I did not see that coming. And that is almost exactly the scene in Seven when they find the sloth victim. And John C. McGillney from Scrubs leans down and goes, you got what you deserved. And all of a sudden he starts.
Right. So fucking scary.
I think that's the scene that made Shudder's 101 Scariest Movie Moments.
Rightfully so.
Yeah. And but Seven, no, shut up. And yeah, that scene got me. That was a like jump scare fucking got me moment. And apparently he is somehow alive. And, like, in a coma.
Yeah.
And I'm sure we're going to see him again in future episodes.
Yes.
But holy shit, when you see the first episode ends with them like finding what appears to be like frozen, they're almost like a scene by scene take from The Thing of like these two frozen heads next to one another. And you don't know where one ends and the other begins. And then in episode 2, they move this like tableau of frozen human flesh.
Yep.
To the middle of an ice skating rink.
Yep.
And the fact, like, could you imagine scarier than being out in like 30 Days of Night, Alaska, would be sitting alone in an ice skating rink and having to just sit there and watch this human corpsicle defrost.
Yeah.
And like her stepdaughter just like casually strolls in next to this like like frozen 6-person blob and is like, hey.
Yes. Really, really good point. I mean, I felt bad for Peter. I mean, we have the same name, but like, I was like, this poor guy's got to be there by himself this whole time. Like, that's fucking a terrifying thing to do for your job, just being alone with this mass in this ice skating rink. And so basically they have a time clock, right? Because the procedure that basically the way that Jodie Foster keeps that mass there, keeps the case in her town, is they can't move the corpses until they thaw. And they have like, I believe 48 hours. Before the corpses thaw. While that mystery is the corpsicles, yes. And so we see that there's a connection between the case that Evangeline had that essentially got her demoted, and it got Jodie Foster in some problems too. That case, and then this new mystery. Now, this woman that was killed, Annie Kay, she was this protester. She was one of the indigenous people that lived there, and she was protesting against the mine. She was murdered with this like star-shaped weapon. And then we also see that there's a connection like to the Salal station, to where she was dating a guy named Clark, and Clark is the one guy that's still missing, that they haven't found his body yet. So
well, they thought because they're so frozen and they were buried so deep that they didn't even know how many people were in the corpsicle until the end of episode 2, where they realize, oh shit, there's only 6 of the guys here.
Right.
One of them's in the hospital and Clark is missing.
Right.
And so,
So Clark, I really want to see what his story is. We find out that he had a trailer that he was essentially like meeting with Annie Kay, like to have sex with her. And then at the very end of episode 2, we go to that trailer, And the stuff that's all scattered about that trailer, they show in the opening credits. It's like the last shot of the opening credits. And that stuff is very reminiscent of stuff they find in the first season
They
of.
find like a paper mache body that
Yeah.
reminded me of like the corpse in the movie May
I
that
see
she
that one.
puts together at the end.
Oh, okay.
Oh, if you've never seen it, spoiler alert, but check out that movie. Lucky McGee's May. Fantastic.
Yeah. There's a couple of things that you mentioned last episode that I'm like, oh shit, I really want to check out. And this episode too, like the Tigers Are Not Afraid.
Also,
Yeah.
like they kind of make it seem like, as they do a lot in this show, that everyone's just meeting the fuck. But there's obviously a lot more to Clark and Annie K's relationship, because
yes,
he got the tattoo. She had that tattoo of the spiral on her back, and he gave that to a tattoo artist, a picture of her, for him to get it on his chest.
Right.
And then it was drawn on
the forehead.
One of the bodies that was frozen. And that like that trailer that they find doesn't seem like a place to have like a sex fest. It seems like a place to like do like cult rituals and shit. And there's also the scene, again, kind of like Cold Open, where you're in the Salal station and the one guy is just hanging out. He's like recording, and Clark, who we don't know it's Clark yet, he's like having what looks like a seizure. He's like shaking all over. And then he stops and he just turns with this like look of dread on his face and goes, "She's awake." And in my head, this is like Mountains of Madness. This is like they are because they also go into detail about what they were doing there and how like they were scientists. They were looking for microorganisms deep in the earth, organisms that had never been discovered before. And they were going to use all of this in science and information to cure cancer and all these things. And I'm like, they're digging deep into the earth. They are going to find, an elder god, an older, like one of the old ones, I feel like one of the things that ties our channel together over 3.5 years is like Lovecraft stuff. We did a Lovecraft month. We did a book review of Lovecraft. We reviewed Lovecraft Country. Yeah. And it's like, here we are. We're basically tackling a show that makes The Thing into a crime series while maintaining those Lovecraftian elements, and hinting at Poe as well. And it's just very exciting to be back in like a world like that.
Hell yeah. I don't think that anyone would have thought that this show was connected to the original True Detective, besides it having the same name. But like, I love when you have these shows that like reference deeper supernatural crazy shit, but it still could be set in the real world, and it's like a real world investigation. I mean, Yellow Jackets does that pretty often, and I just love that. I mean, there's like I said at the beginning, there's overt references to Lovecraft in the first season too, So yeah, I'm glad that you're digging it. I think that's kind of it for the first 2 episodes right now. What do you think, my man?
Yeah, I think we can stop there. I mean, we're set up for a lot of potentially interesting stuff, and I'll tell you one thing that's come out of these 2 episodes is I'm going to rewatch Tigers Are Not Afraid. In fact, I'm going to throw it out there to you since you've never seen it.
Yes.
If it's on Shudder,
yep.
Let's get a review of that up on the channel, because that movie came out back when I was writing for Geeks of Doom, and it was one of those cases where, because it was a foreign film, it came out in America a year later, so it's it's listed as like a 2016 or 17 movie, but I saw it the year later, and then it came out on Shudder. whatever year it came out, it was my number one with a bullet horror film of that year.
Fuck.
And I would love to rewatch it. It feels very Guillermo del Toro in the sense that it is, in a way, I don't want to say it's similar to this, but if you've seen early del Toro, especially like Devil's Backbone, and even Pan's Labyrinth, where there is like real world horror going on, and there's also an element of supernatural to that real world horror, and somehow it ties together beautifully. And it was just such a great fucking movie. So I'd love to review that. Isa Lopez's Tigers Are Not Afraid.
Sure.
And yeah, we're going to be back Monday to record an episode of a review of episode 3.
Yes, sir. Very good. Yeah, so I'm excited. I mean, just talking to you about the show has made me really excited. Is there anything else coming up on the Lastercast that people should look out for?
Well, we just did a review of a new horror movie that is coming to VOD, is going to be on VOD by the time you watch this, called The Seeding, directed by Barnaby Clay, which we both really, really enjoyed. And if you can rent that or buy it on VOD, definitely do that. Aside from that, I know we're covering this, and we have our top 10 list from last year. I've put up a few short reviews. Destroy All Neighbors on Shudder.
Yeah,
we did a review of that last week, which another movie we both really enjoyed. Yeah, that's pretty much it, unless I'm missing something.
No, 2024 has been pretty fucking good so far.
Not bad. Not bad.
Man.
And it's only January.
Fuck yeah. Nice. Well, I enjoyed this, man. I hope that you guys enjoyed watching this at home. Make sure you subscribe to the Lastercast.